So nobody believed that this was possible. Nobody thought that you could crash Bugatti, buy it back, and nonetheless fix it. What do you gotta say to that, Mr. Matt?
I think we can rebuild this.
You think so?
I think we can.
Fuck them, let's go. Fucking fix it.
When people first heard about the idea of rebuilding a Crash Mat Armstrong and Alex Gonzalez Bugatti Chiron Per Sport, most of them simply did not believe it. The idea itself sounded unrealistic. This is not a normal car. It is one of the most exclusive hypercars ever made, with only around 60 units in existence. Each one costs millions of dollars and is built with extreme precision, advanced engineering, and materials that are not easy to repair. So when news spread that one of these rare cars had been crashed and then bought back from a salvage auction, people expected the story to end there. Normally, when a car like this is declared a total loss, it disappears from the road forever. But this story did not follow the normal path. Instead of walking away, Alex Gonzalez decided to take a huge risk. After his insurance company paid out the claim, the damaged car was sent to auction. Alex then made a surprising move. He bought his own crashed Bugatti back for around $1.9 million. That decision alone made people curious. But what came next made the entire automotive world pay attention. Instead of sending the car back to Bugatti for a factory repair, he chose a completely different route. He contacted Mat Armstrong, a YouTuber known for rebuilding damaged supercars. Together, they decided to attempt something that many believed could not be done outside of a factory environment. At first, this looked like just another ambitious rebuild project. But very quickly, it turned into something much bigger. The challenge was not just about fixing a car. It became a story about control, ownership, and whether a company can decide what you are allowed to do with something you legally own. This is where the real tension began. Bugatti, one of the most powerful and respected car manufacturers in the world, stepped in and made a move that changed everything. They locked the car's VIN, which means they blocked access to official parts through their global network. This decision made the rebuild much harder and turned the situation into a direct conflict. Now, it was no longer just a repair project. It became a battle between a private owner and a global brand. People were no longer watching just to see if the car would be fixed. They were watching to see who would win. Could a small team working in a regular workshop really challenge a company like Bugatti? Could they bring back a car that had been declared impossible to rebuild? These questions pulled millions of viewers into the story. And as the project continued, it became clear that this was not just about one car. It was about proving something much bigger. It was about showing that with enough skill, determination, and creativity, even the most difficult challenges can be overcome. This is a story of how an impossible rebuild turned into one of the most talked about automotive projects in recent years. The story truly begins with the crash itself, which left the Bugatti Chiron Per Sport in a severely damaged condition. This was not a simple accident where a few panels needed replacement. The damage was deep and complex. The front end of the car had taken a heavy impact. The airbags had deployed, which already indicates a serious collision. Multiple carbon fiber panels were cracked, and key parts like the headlights and the famous Bugatti horseshoe grille were completely destroyed. But the most concerning damage was hidden beneath the surface. The gearbox mounts and structural components showed signs of serious stress, raising questions about whether the car could ever be safely driven again. In cars like this, the structure is made from carbon fiber, not steel. Unlike metal, carbon fiber does not bend in the same way. When it is damaged, it can lose strength in ways that are not always visible. This makes repairs much more difficult and risky. That is why manufacturers like Bugatti usually insist that such cars must be repaired only in their own specialized facilities. After inspecting the car, Bugatti reportedly offered a repair solution that would cost around $1.7 million. Even after reducing the estimate to about $600,000, the cost was still extremely high. For most people, that would be the end of the story. But Alex Gonzalez was not ready to accept that outcome. Instead of paying for a factory repair, he chose to explore other options. This decision increased the risk, but also opened the door to something unique. By bringing in Mat Armstrong, he was not just hiring a mechanic. He was starting a public project that would be documented and shared with millions of viewers online. The financial side of this decision also made the story more interesting. Alex had already spent nearly $2 million to buy the car back. On top of that, he would have to invest even more money into rebuilding it. However, if the car could be successfully restored, its value could rise to several $1,000,000 again. This created a situation where the risk was very high, but the potential reward was also significant. At the same time, the project began to attract attention not just because of the car, but because of what it represented. It showed a different approach to ownership. Instead of depending completely on the manufacturer, Alex and Matt were trying to take control of the process themselves. This idea challenged a traditional system where companies like Bugatti maintained strict control over parts, repairs, and service. As more details about the project became public, people started to realize that this was not just about money or even about fixing a car. It was about testing the limits of what is possible outside the official system. And as the rebuild began, it quickly became clear that the biggest obstacles were not just technical, but also structural, legal, and even philosophical. When Bugatti decided to lock the VIN the car, it changed the entire direction of the story. A VIN, or vehicle identification number, is like a unique identity for every car. By locking it, Bugatti effectively blocked access to official parts through their global network. This meant that no authorized dealer could supply components for that specific vehicle. For a car as complex as the Chiron Per Sport, this was a major obstacle. Unlike regular cars, where parts can often be found from different suppliers, a Bugatti relies on highly specialized components that are made specifically for that model. There are no easy replacements available in the market. By cutting off access to these parts, Bugatti made it extremely difficult for the rebuild to follow a normal path. From Bugatti's point of view, this decision can be understood as a safety measure. These cars are extremely powerful machines, producing around 1,600 horsepower. If something goes wrong during a repair, the consequences could be serious. The company has a responsibility to ensure that their vehicles meet strict safety standards. However, from the perspective of Alex and Matt, the situation looked very different. They saw it as a form of control that limited their ability to repair something they owned. This difference in perspective created a strong conflict that people could easily understand. On one side, there was a global manufacturer with strict rules and high standards. On the other side, there was an owner and a builder trying to prove that it could be done differently. The situation became even more interesting when Alex publicly challenged Bugatti. He gave them a 24-hour ultimatum, saying that if they did not remove the restrictions, he would move forward with alternative methods like 3D scanning and custom fabrication. This bold move caught attention online and forced a response. Mate Rimac, the CEO of Bugatti Rimac, personally reached out and explained the risks involved. He pointed out that certain parts could not simply be recreated using basic methods, and that the rebuild required specialized knowledge and equipment. His response showed that Bugatti was aware of the situation and concerned about how it was being handled. Eventually, the VIN blacklist was lifted after discussions between both sides. However, this did not mean full support from the manufacturer. The team still had to find their own solutions for many of the most difficult challenges. This partial resolution added another layer to the story. It showed that while communication was possible, the gap between the two sides was still very large. The rebuild was now moving forward, but it would not be easy. Without full factory support, every step would require creativity, problem-solving, and careful planning. And as the project continued, it became clear that the biggest test was still ahead. Once the rebuild work began in full, the team faced some of the most difficult challenges ever seen in a car project. One of the biggest tasks was splitting the chassis of the car. According to Bugatti, this is something that can only be done in a few specialized facilities around the world. It requires precise equipment and highly trained technicians. However, Mat Armstrong and his team decided to attempt this in a regular workshop. Using creative methods and improvised tools, they managed to separate the chassis successfully. This moment became one of the most talked about parts of the project because it directly challenged the idea that such work could only be done in a factory environment. After gaining access to the internal structure, they were able to properly inspect the damage. While there were issues, the situation was not as bad as many had feared. This allowed them to move forward with repairs instead of giving up. Another major challenge was the lack of official parts. Since they could not rely on Bugatti's supply chain, they had to find alternative solutions. This is where modern technology played a key role. The team used 3D scanning to create digital models of damaged components. These models were then used to produce new parts through CNC machining. This method allowed them to achieve a high level of accuracy and maintain the required strength and quality. It is important to understand that this was not simple 3D printing. Instead, it was a combination of advanced measurement and precision manufacturing. This approach is often used in professional engineering when original parts are not available. In addition to structural components, the team also worked on other systems of the car. Custom radiators were built to replace the damaged ones. The interior was carefully restored to match the original design. Even the exhaust system was redesigned to improve performance and sound. Each of these steps required careful planning and attention to detail. The process was not quick or easy. It took months of work, testing, and adjustments. Throughout this time, Matt documented everything on his YouTube channel. This transparency allowed viewers to see both the successes and the challenges. It also helped build trust with the audience. People were not just watching a finished result. They were seeing the entire journey. This made the story more engaging and real. As the rebuild progressed, more people began to believe that success was possible. What started as an impossible project was slowly becoming a reality. And then came the moment everyone was waiting for. The moment when the engine finally started was one of the most important points in the entire story. After months of hard work, uncertainty, and technical challenges, the team reached a stage where they could test the car. This was not just about turning a key. It was about proving that all the systems were working together correctly. When the engine came to life, it confirmed that the rebuild had reached a major milestone. For a car that had been declared impossible to fix outside of factory conditions, this was a powerful statement. The sound of the W16 engine running again was more than just noise. It represented success, determination, and a result of countless hours of effort. This moment quickly spread across the internet. Videos of the engine started gaining millions of views, and people from all over the world began to talk about the project. The reaction was not limited to car enthusiasts. Even people who had no interest in hypercars found the story interesting because of its deeper meaning. The idea that a small team could achieve something that a major company had questioned was inspiring. Social media played a huge role in spreading this story. Each update, each breakthrough, and each challenge became part of a larger narrative that people followed closely. The project turned into a series that viewers looked forward to watching. It created a sense of connection between the audience and the builders. People felt like they were part of the journey. The financial aspect also added another layer to the story. If the car could be fully restored and made road-ready, its value would increase significantly. This meant that the risk taken by Alex Gonzalez could turn into a very smart investment. However, the project was not just about money. It was about proving that something difficult could be done with the right approach. The success of the engine start did not mean that the entire project was complete, but it showed that they were on the right path. It also changed how people viewed the situation. What started as doubt turned into respect. Many began to see the rebuild not just as a challenge to Bugatti, but as an example of what could be achieved through skill and determination. This shift in public opinion was important because it influenced how the story was understood. It was no longer just about a car. It was about a bigger idea. In the end, the story of this Bugatti rebuild is about much more than just fixing a damaged hypercar. It raises important questions about ownership control and the right to repair. When a company can decide whether you can access parts or services for something you own, it creates a situation where the owner's freedom is limited. This issue is not only related to cars. It exists in many industries, including electronics, software, and machinery. The Bugatti case simply made it more visible because of the high value and public attention involved. The actions of Mat Armstrong and Alex Gonzalez show that there are alternative ways to approach these challenges. They did not ignore the risks or the complexity of the project. Instead, they used knowledge, technology, and creativity to find solutions. At the same time, Bugatti's concerns about safety cannot be ignored. These vehicles are extremely powerful and require precise engineering. Any mistake in the rebuild process could have serious consequences. This means that both sides of the argument have valid points. The key difference is how those points are applied. Should manufacturers have full control, or should owners have more freedom? The answer is not simple, but stories like this help start important discussions. The rebuild also changed how people view independent builders. It showed that with the right skills and tools, it is possible to achieve results that were once limited to factory environments. This does not mean that every project will succeed, but it proves that the limits are not as fixed as they once seemed. As the story continues to evolve, its impact will likely be felt beyond the automotive world. It has already influenced conversations about repair rights and ownership. It has also inspired many people to think differently about what is possible. In the end, the real victory is not just about proving someone wrong. It is about expanding the idea of what can be done. And that is why this story matters. As the rebuild story continued to spread across the internet, it began to move beyond just entertainment and into something much more serious. What started as a YouTube project slowly turned into a real example that people use when talking about laws, business practices, and consumer rights. Around the world, discussions about the right to repair have been growing for years. These discussions focus on a simple idea. If you buy something, you should have the freedom to repair it however you choose. But in reality, many companies limit that freedom by controlling parts, software, and access to technical information. In this case, Bugatti's decision to lock the VIN showed how powerful that control can be. Even though Alex legally owned the car, he could not easily repair it because he was blocked from accessing official parts. This situation raised an important question. Does ownership truly mean control, or is it limited by the manufacturer's rules? Governments and regulators in different countries have already started looking into these issues. New laws are being discussed and, in some places, already introduced to protect consumers and give them more freedom to repair their own products. The Bugatti rebuild became a real-world example that made these discussions easier to understand. Instead of talking about small devices like phones or laptops, people could now see the same issue happening at the highest level of the automotive world. This made the topic more visible and more interesting to a wider audience. At the same time, the project also created pressure on manufacturers. Companies like Bugatti have built their reputation on quality, safety, and exclusivity. They want to make sure that every car meets their standards, even after it leaves the factory. From their perspective, allowing uncontrolled repairs could damage their brand if something goes wrong. However, the success of this rebuild showed that independent work, when done properly, can also achieve strong results. This does not mean that manufacturers are wrong, but it does show that their approach is not the only one possible. For the business side, this creates a challenge. If more owners start demanding access to parts and repair freedom, companies may need to adjust their policies. They might have to find a balance between maintaining control and giving customers more flexibility. The Bugatti story also highlighted how powerful online platforms have become. A single project documented by Mat Armstrong was able to reach millions of viewers and influence public opinion. This kind of visibility makes it harder for companies to ignore these issues. It also shows that content creators are no longer just entertainers. They can play a role in shaping discussions that affect entire industries. As more people followed the rebuild, it became clear that this was not just a one-time event. It was part of a larger shift in how people think about ownership, technology, and control. And whether companies like Bugatti change their approach or not, the conversation has already started, and it is unlikely to stop anytime soon. While much of the attention in this story focused on the technical work and the conflict with Bugatti, there's also an important human side that should not be ignored. Projects like this are not just about machines. They are about people making difficult decisions under pressure. For Alex Gonzalez, the choice to buy back his crashed car was already a huge risk. Spending nearly $2 million on a damaged vehicle is not something most people would ever consider. But the real challenge came after that decision. Every step of the rebuild required more investment, more time, and more belief that the project would succeed. There were no guarantees. At any moment, a major issue could have appeared that would make the entire effort fail. This kind of uncertainty creates stress, even for someone with resources. On the other side, Mat Armstrong also faced a different kind of pressure. As a public figure with millions of viewers, he was documenting every part of the process. This means that any mistake, delay, or failure will be seen by a global audience. That level of visibility can be both motivating and challenging. It pushes you to perform at your best, but it also means there is no room to hide problems. Instead of avoiding this pressure, Matt used it as a strength. By sharing the process openly, he built trust with his audience. People could see that the work was real, not staged or exaggerated. This honesty became one of the key reasons why the project gained so much support. Another important factor was teamwork. Complex projects like this cannot be completed by one person alone. They require collaboration between different experts, each bringing their own skills and knowledge. From fabrication specialists to interior designers, many people contributed to the rebuild. Each contribution, no matter how small, played a role in the final result. This shows that success in such projects is not just about one individual, but about how well a team works together. There were also moments where the team had to make difficult decisions. For example, when dealing with damaged components, they had to decide whether to repair, replace, or redesign them. Each option came with its own risks and costs. Making the right choice required careful thinking and experience. These decisions are often invisible to viewers, but they are critical to the outcome. The emotional side of the project is also important. Watching something that was once considered lost slowly come back to life creates a strong sense of achievement. It is not just about fixing a car. It is about proving that effort and determination can overcome challenges. This feeling is something that viewers can connect with, even if they know nothing about cars. It is a universal experience that makes the story more powerful. In the end, the human element is what gives the project its meaning. Without the risks taken by Alex and the effort put in by Matt and his team, this would have been just another damaged car. Instead, it became a story that inspired millions and showed what is possible when people are willing to take on difficult challenges. As the story reaches its conclusion, an important question remains. Did Alex Gonzalez and Mat Armstrong truly win against Bugatti? The answer depends on how we define winning. If winning means completing the rebuild and proving that the car could run again, then the answer is clearly yes. They managed to achieve something that many believed was impossible. The engine started, the systems worked, and the project moved forward despite major obstacles. From this perspective, it was a clear success. However, if we look at the situation more carefully, the answer becomes more complex. Bugatti's concerns about safety and proper repair procedures were not entirely wrong. These cars are extremely advanced and require careful handling. The company's role is to ensure that their vehicles remain safe and reliable even after accidents. In that sense, their position was based on responsibility, not just control. At the same time, the actions of Alex and Matt showed that independent solutions can also work when done correctly. They did not ignore the technical challenges. Instead, they approached them with seriousness and attention to detail. This shows that the situation is not as simple as one side being right and the other being wrong. Instead, it is about finding a balance between control and freedom. The real victory in this story may not belong entirely to either side. Instead, it belongs to the idea that limits can be challenged. By completing the rebuild, Alex and Matt expanded what people believe is possible. They showed that with the right combination of knowledge, tools, and determination, even the most difficult problems can be solved. This does not mean that every similar project will succeed, but it does open the door for new approaches. The impact of this story will likely continue for a long time. It has already influenced how people think about ownership and repair rights. It has also shown manufacturers that customers are paying attention and are willing to question existing systems. For viewers, it provided more than just entertainment. It offered a lesson about persistence and innovation. In the end, the story is not just about a car or a company. It is about progress. It is about the idea that challenges can lead to new solutions and that even well-established systems can evolve. Whether you see it as a victory, a debate, or a turning point, one thing is clear. This project has changed the conversation, and that in itself is a kind of win that goes far beyond any single rebuild. Even after the engine started and the biggest milestone was achieved, the story of this rebuilt Bugatti Chiron Sport is far from over. In many ways, that moment was not the end, but the beginning of a new phase. Getting the engine to run is a major achievement, but Turning the car into a fully road-ready machine requires even more work. There are still many systems that need to be tested carefully. High-performance cars like this depend on perfect coordination between the engine, gearbox, suspension, braking system, and electronics. Even a small issue in one area can affect the entire vehicle. This means a team must go through a long process of testing, adjusting, and improving the car before it can be considered truly complete. Another important factor is safety. As discussed earlier, Bugatti's concerns about safety were not without reason. When a car with this level of power and complexity is rebuilt outside of factory conditions, every component must be checked to ensure it meets the required standards. This includes stress testing, alignment checks, and possibly even track testing under controlled conditions.